superiority which I once believed to be the immunity to withstand, to resist the communalization or the hegemonic treatment of the minority. Actually, I feel that all these efforts are in vain. Not only with regard to me, but when we go, it is not a hasty generalization compared to my experience or simply counting on my experience. But whenever we talk to too many people who try to either cope up with the secularism of the majoritarian stand or the so-called secularism of the majoritarian way of life, fail to withstand or fail to resist because even then, in spite of their being such and such, they are treating again and again as someone who belongs to the other within quotes, belongs to the other. In that way, I am telling that it is not the question of number, it is the question of the ideology, it is the question of the hegemony, it is the question of the ideology which rules the country. Jawaharlal Nehru, while delivering a talk immediately after the independence or so, was telling that after naming, just like he was telling, nomenclature is also something very important. After naming Islam, Parsi, Sikh, Christian, etc., he was telling that all these religions belong to India. And if we say India is a Hindu country, then naturally it means that all those belonging to all these religions which are within quote other, belonging to the other, are no more Indians. So, for the purpose of maintaining a national unity, whatever the reason be, but national unity, he deliberately put forth the idea that India is a multicultural entity, and our constitution also says so. But my argument is that in spite of all these efforts by certain leaders who stood behind the secular values, India could not maintain an ideology which is actually capable of treating the minorities, which is capable of treating the margins as equal to the center, because the center is not merely the center, it is a center which rules over the people. So, I am facing, as an individual, I am facing two-pronged difficulties. One being a Muslim by birth, the Muslims around me who are believers and who are practicing so many things day to day are treating me as definitely as an atheist or as a non-believer. And so, on the one hand, I am a non-believer or a heretic, and on the other hand, in the majoritarian eyes or in the majoritarian ideology, majoritarian perspective, whenever I talk about something about identity or language or religion or whatever, naturally, even without saying itself, I will be treated, or even my children will be treated. Where people used to see, poker, you have no problem. Your children will get quota. What quota I am getting? My children have no caste or religion in their certificates. Still many intellectuals, many leftists, many corporates used to tell me that, poker, you will not have any difficulty, you will be having quota. Quota means reservation. So this way, always a kind of humiliation is holding the individual. That is something which is, which I think, which cannot be ignored. And nowadays, the people have realized that kind of neglects, that kind of ignoring, that kind of ridicules, that kind of treatments, etc., etc. So many big things are there in the society. I am not going into such things because I am talking about being a minority rather than becoming a minority. So when I approached a house owner in territory, which is a very, very secular space as far as I am concerned, because a good number of people are non-believers even. But I was wandering outside the house, hearing the talk inside between P.K. Prabhakaran and the house owner, that he is a Muslim. I never thought that he is a Muslim. You talked a house is required for a marsh, a teacher, and we were ready to give it. It is your students' experience is because of here, but simply because of my name, despite the fact that I am a non-practicing Muslim, I was denied a house, and PK, my friends and comrades had to struggle with the householder in order to sign an agreement at least for 11 months. So it is there. It is the condition of being a minority, being a Muslim or being a Christian or being a Sikh or being so many court judgments are there which treat Sikh similarly, Parsi similarly. So many issues are there. I am not going into such empirical details as time does not permit one more talk. There are so many people willing to participate in this discussion and all. So I am telling is that I am concluding. In this context, I am bound to ask the question: what is wrong with being different? What is wrong with being the someone who belongs to what you do not belong to? That is the question. We always want to identify with ourselves. As rightly he pointed out, I want a friend who thinks similarly. But rather than why can't I have a friend who thinks differently? Similarly, why can't a society, a community exist with different names, with different etiquettes, different beliefs, so on and so forth? Why can't the community tolerate it? So that the tolerance is not a good term as far as I am concerned. Even then I say that why can't the majoritarian community tolerate? Why can't the majoritarian community bear with? Why can't the hegemonic ideology bear with the differences that exist in the country, in our India? Hegemonic ideology in both ways, that is as the ruling ideology of the world police and as the ideology of Hindutva. When he talks about the pan-Islamism and all, that is also something which is to be considered. Because I say world police because whenever we talk about US, now what is going on, where so many ships are sent from UAE, Saudi Arabia, so on and so forth. So when we scrutinize all these details, we find that all these ships belong to one and the same source. All these ships belong to one and the same source. So when we talk about the world police or Hindutva, naturally we have to identify the other in the hegemonic ideology of the world as well as in the hegemonic ideology of the country. The other always live in the margins, and his or her voice from the periphery is often unheard, ignored, neglected, ridiculed, and suppressed. So the fear of the majority is baseless, and the fear of the minority is actually the fear of the being. That's all I want to say. Thank you very much.
I'm just responding. Here the topic is becoming a minority. I just think whether it's an activity, becoming an activity. I think the clue is that one has to look at this idea of minority as an activity rather than entity. If you look at it as an entity, the whole argument becomes different. When we look at it as an activity, everybody, I can also become minority. See now, if I am understood as some kind of name or some caste at all, if I look at as an entity, I am not privileged to become minority. But I think it is possible for anybody in this world to become minority. And becoming minority, as he said, is to come closer to truth, and becoming majority is coming closer to consent. Consent is that what we have agreed upon. Consent is to be with whatever is counted. That means to be a minority is to be sensitive to whatever is uncounted. Throughout history, historians count many things. They don't count many things. Sociologists count many things. They don't count many things. And whatever is uncounted, whatever has prevented the sociologists from uncounting, whatever the philosophers were prevented from uncounting is minority. For instance, philosophers were talking about ideal versus rational, and they were talking about ontology versus epistemology, but they could not talk about structure till sociologists pointed out that, because that was the thing was not counted by. Again, when sociologists talk about structure, they don't talk about whichever is rebelling structure. Now they just look at the plastic of structure and give name to accordance to that structure, and they talk about the entities, not the process of becoming minority. Becoming minority, if I take his words, is to come closer to truth, that is unbecoming majority. Unbecoming majority is not responsibility of any one person, caste, community, or all, and that is a responsibility of all. What I was yesterday, whatever I was having consent, very clear consent about many things about yesterday, if I could today rebel against that, then I am becoming minority. Becoming minority is counting the uncounted. Now what happens is that, so it is minority is within ourselves is something yet to be discovered. Whatever we have given our consent, whatever we have agreed upon, our caste, our religion, our sexuality, whatever our medical way in which we are, whatever we have totally agreed, and there is the majoritarian, and that is unbecoming minority, that is yielding to this big war machine which has put us into big sociality. Historians were doing it because nomads are, all social sciences were totally, thoroughly afraid of, terrorized by nomadic way of life. Even today, among us, if we don't like somebody, we call them Tendi. That means you are a nomad. Don't behave like a nomad. That means the fear of nomad, fear of not having history, fear of not being social was actually constituting the social history and respective disciplines. Now what happens is that majoritization was automatically happening, and that became the academics, and that became the passion, and we are working for it. The thing is that how can we counter it? Already we are part of majoritarian. Already me as a person is a majoritarian. What I was holding yesterday, whatever definition I have on myself is majoritarian. And this is a personal responsibility, otherwise becoming minority cannot be possible, possibly universal. And this is a universal idea too. This becoming minority is a universal idea too. Now, what is social? By social, whatever is counted is social. As the last he said, this is a representation. It's a representational games. In representational games, all these things. Now, what actually is represented? What is the in thing represented? There is no in thing. There is no in thing. There is no secret ingredient in the soup. In the film Panda. What is that Panda? Kung Fu Panda. There is no secret ingredient. There is no secret. that, whatever we are is assembled, historically assembled. These beliefs are just came into us. Can we throw away this? Manness, manliness, womanness, Hinduness, or casteness, judging others. Can it be unwound? And unwinding it becomes minoritarian. And gluing to it, constructing it, doctoring it becomes majoritarian. And if you look at this now, the thing is that the vector, if vector objects can be understood in terms of its manifold. Whatever is the x-axis, y-axis, z-axis, whatsoever axis converge and makes that object to move. And the movement is not in this object, entity, but the overall process that constitutes that movement. And recognizing that we cannot even accept self as a self as something being made by, in relation, in contact with others, how this being is always being made. How from a small childhood we are being majoritized, and how this majoritization can be unwound should be the question of becoming minority means. Then another problem with there is a majority as a word is there. It's a group word. Minority is another group word. The problem is that this group word misrepresents again. Because minority is another group. Can we think beyond groups? Because it's a noun. So what I think is that it's a crack. It's a crack from the yesterday, crack from the past is what becoming minority. Then that crack is unnamed because it's uncounted, unspelled, unsaid. It is something to do with void. Void is something which we haven't experienced, which we are comfortable with certain majoritarian things because there is a fear of unknown. The fear of unknown makes us majoritarian. And can we be freed from the fear of unknown and accept different kind of sexualities, different kind of sexual relations, different different kind of everyday changes, transitions. And we talked about number. Number basically counts. That is why it hides whatever is uncounted. That is the problem with number-based majority minority. And it defaces. Number means it defaces. Not only uncounts, it defaces. It gives us a base and it uncounts. It gives us a base. This much of number, Muslim, Hindu, Christian, whatsoever. And it unfaces our individual differences which is coming from our childhood, different kind of adulthood, different kind of experience, all the differences are shut. And simply we are grouped into one. So it deliberately misrecognizes. And that misrecognition is done academically. And then quality. Quality, now, it is about we uncount. Unity is achieved only by uncounting and neglecting multiplicity. If multiplicity is accounted, that means it's uncountable. But we think through counting, think through language. So there is a natural, or not natural, some habitual practice of becoming majority. How to break this habitual practice of becoming majority? Because language makes us to become majority, because we count through language. Numbers make us to count. How to overcome this habit of counting? Because the other thing doesn't have name. Void doesn't have name. That's the problem. Then about value. Now, value of majority is strength. The problem is that majority is always a lie. It is a lie that is supposed to be believed because it is convenient for us. It's a concept which we think gives us power. And that power is achieved through the life. You please let us think about it. I'm not, no. So, majority is always majoritization, is an ideology. And minoritization is another ideology of majoritization. It is not something non-majority. Minoritization is another ideology. It's again majoritarian ideology. Now please think about it. And that ideology is dangerous because majoritarian ideology forces us to uncount and pushes us to be uncomfortable with differences, and wherever possible differences has to be moral policed, stopped down. The thing is that in our everyday life, family also we have this problem. We have children and they have to be moralized. Then we have this problem of majoritizing. That always pushes on us how to escape from this tendency to majoritize, because that is there in everyday life as we practice. And this is what I think. And cognition. And so becoming cognition means constructs. Construct means thinking. Thinking means counting. Cognition inherently has majoritization in it. How to counter cognize whatever we have already cognized only leads us to minoritization. Then about, so there is no I am this or I am that. It is only I am becoming or I am unbecoming. Being is becoming. Becoming is unbecoming. Thank you very much.
Okay. Those of us, please come. I would like to raise one issue in connection with the public. When we are listening to the voice of others, there is an implicit violence in the sense, there is an incommensurability, as Elizabeth Moginelli would phrase it. And this incommensurability itself is the cause and effect of this violence. I'm afraid when we are saying, as the public sphere, as the majority, which defines the norms of listening and recognition, that we are ready to listen, to just voice minorities, all the identities, please come and voice your problems. This very attitude has this tendency to translate. How can we translate the voices and experiences which are incommensurable to this existing public? What is the nature of the public? So here I have seen two responses. One which calls for self-purification, I would say, the later one. The first one which speaks about how our articulations in the so-called public are misrepresented, or how one is being pushed into a position of victimhood. So the process by which one becomes a victim is not that innocent. It's the very constitutive factors of which make this public, which causes this violence. In that sense, I'm simultaneously provoked and inspired by your invocation of Kadhire's framework, because he speaks about this concatenation and cascades between the global and the local. And your reference to the word Nyunapaksham in that sense, I think it can be translated as Paksham as the meaning of standpoint or taking side also. So there is a semantic instability in that word itself. Because Nyunam, as contrasted with Bhuri in Nyunapaksham and Bhuri Paksham, I think the language, the local, and the way one gets recognized in which idiom, in which vocabulary, in which terms one gets recognized while appearing in public is not in our control. So these selections, governmental discourse provides the terms like gay, MSM, or something else. I would like to end by pointing out two specific cases in this regard. That is one of Hijras and the other of Devdasis. So this identity called Devdasi or Hijra, with its own specific histories, and if you look at the colonial and pre-colonial history of those Devdasi, I think they were so powerful in the feudal power structure. When the notion of prostitute entered through colonial reforms, they became powerless and got marginalized. Same with the case of Hijras. So the global circulation of idioms like as part of the governmental and non-governmental circuits provides opportunities and provides languages by which one can, norms of recognition through which one can adopt or negate. One recent development in the sex workers politics is redefining or throwing out the very notion of sex worker and defining it as what is entrepreneurship or business. So there you get a radically different notion of identity. So my question is, by problematizing all the concepts around this debate, you were leaving the public as taken for granted. Right from the beginning, while you were discussing about your interactions and deliberations with Ramla Thapar, the sort of we, which listens and which accommodates differences, which is ready to listen to different voices, isn't that we, the nature of that very public, very violent, we are ready to listen, isn't that attitude itself very violent? Because there is a radical incommensurability, radical intranslatability. For instance, when sex workers articulate their problems, the way in which the public listens to that is in the sense that the very identity called sex worker is the issue. So you have to rehabilitate. So the way one articulates one problem, then the way the public listens to it. And this very accommodation of differences is presupposed on these norms of recognition are accepted by the listening so-called public, and this very public is very violent and majoritarian. Is that my sense? So the question of debate and this question of radical intranslatability is to be addressed. If at all we have to problematize and take this public.
Thank you, Professor Sarabhai, and I think I agree with most points you came in here on today. And I also empathize with many other points raised by the respondents. But then one point that I would like to bring in is there was this film called The Girl from China. It was a film that was made by Godard. It was made sometime in the 1970s. It was copyrighted and made in a CD only much later. So I got to watch it only in 2011. But it was a film which was made during the time of the Cultural Revolution, during the time of the 68 Paris. So it talks about five students who come together to bring about a kind of coup in France. And it's all talking about how they will organize this rebellion and how they will actually bring about a just society. All based, and they are all focused on this little red book of Mao, and their house is full of this little red. They are living in this book, house which is full of this little red book, and they don't read any other literature. And another time they are discussing what is going to be the future. And then on the walls you find a graffiti, which is quite an innocent graffiti for those times, which says a minority is a group which is on the path to become a majority. Now you jump cut from 1967 to 2011 when we are watching this film. In fact, I organized for my students along with a few others. The whole context of meaning has changed. It's no longer the left, liberal, enlightened people who are addressing the question of minority, whereas it is those pigeonholed, small little communities who are being addressed as minorities, and they are absolutely hopeless and never in sight of a future where they could become actually a majority, take on things on their own terms. So there is actually a global imbalance of power that has been already created in the use of this very phrase called minority, and which also brings us to this question of Nunapaksha. I don't think Malayalam has ever thought about coining a term for minority. It is quite out of a Malayali's imagination to think. Nunapaksha is obviously a Sanskrit term, as much as I believe is Alpasankhya, and there could be other reasons why they have come to be used to represent a term like minority today, because as of course reflected in the legal practice also, which is trying to create or frame identities in order to coin specific others, rather than describing what justice they themselves represent. Because the courts have always been pontificating on these questions as if their own identities never mattered, or as if they did not have a religion, or as if they did not have a caste, and or if they constituted a casteless public, and which in fact gave them some kind of a privilege in order to pronounce on what others, what the caste of another is, or who is a minority. So it is linked to that question where a slow impoverization of this concept of minority has been brought into place, and I would like to know the reasons for this. Now, what has caused this kind of an intellectual decline in the last 40 years, which can be more or less attributed to a number of things? There is always the decline of the left, the global decline of the left. There has been a very worrying kind of stagnation in thinking amongst the left, because even their own petty concerns have emerged in different ways, and I don't think I do have to really talk about that, because Pokermash has really pointed out how he has been interrogated several times by his own comrades, which in fact is not alien to me either. It's so quite common in the teacher community, especially in an enlightened public like Kerala. So here, what goes unnoticed or what goes unmarked is who is the representative, and that has to be actually spelled out very clearly, I think, in order to create a kind of a discourse which is not really very partisan. Because women is a very obvious case in this instance, because while talking about the women's reservation bill, you're talking about a community which is a majority minority, but you're talking about a 33% reservation. The numerical kind of equivalence never works in that context, and that does not apply merely to women as a minority, but to Dalits and tribals as marginals. It's the same question that comes in. Thank you.
Thanks, Sundar, for illuminating on the issue of minority. You are approaching it, the issue of minority, from a very broad and gross political spectrum, as political categories. And what about the other minorities who are not represented in the representative politics, who are not stratified in terms of religion, ethnicity and culture, who does not have any identity or discourse, who does not try to come to be represented in the mainstream politics. The issue, I'm sympathetic with addressing the issue in terms of majority and minority that is going on in the present political discussion. And of course, it is our responsibility. I also feel that to side with the marginalized, we have to be sympathetic with them. But at the same time, the question of the different minority, that also needs to be addressed. That who does not have a name, in fact, Madhu was also referring to that question, and only pointing out one or two more points to this. Those minorities would like to call them to be eternal minorities, because they forever they want to remain as minorities, as absolutely singular, without any want to be stratified in terms of group or categories. Those people who live multiplicity, those people who only want to create music probably, and those who only want to love each other, and those who only want to roam around, the nomads. What about them? That issue, that is, I think, by touching upon that issue, then only we will be addressing the issue of minority.
Yeah, Sarika, you have made a lot of interrogation, sociological engagements with minorities. So I'm not going to do that. So many of the things that you mentioned were true in terms of methodology and the approach to sociology system. So my question is in terms of or the socio-political background of how Babaji and the House Slaughter. So the so-called minority group was supposed to be the superior position, as we call the dominant caste position, so the Brahmins. So Brahmins and those supported groups which likely to be termed as or likely to live like Brahmins are engaging very courageously in the so-called current socio-political realm, and they dictate the so-called the beliefs to the so-called the minorities in the differentiated minorities in the Hinduism. So my question is, how a minority, this kind of minority group, can effectively rule the differences and the collective majority with their negotiations and dictations. So how is it possible in the how can so in past I think it was also very successfully they were dealing with such strategy of ruling the greater majority. This is if this is the case of number. So the so-called the hierarchically superiorly positioned the majority, the Brahminical power, is a minority in number. So they do all these of noted things in this region. So how could it be possible?
Thank you very much for helping us to understand majority and minority in a creative way, in a different and nuanced way. I have a doubt. What do you mean by taking a moral position? Because you have pointed out Gandhi as an example. There is a lot of violence happening. I know that this interpretation itself can reduce violence, but again I am thinking there is a lot of violence happening, a lot of silencing happening. Then what is the meaning of taking a moral position? Gandhi told us that we have to consider lower caste people as heritage, but he didn't thoroughly criticize the Varna system. He didn't take part in the mythology scene part now. So is it needed? We have to critically engage with the social stereotyping, the taken for granted narratives, or just be creative and be in a different nuanced way of contributing to the society.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure listening to very thoughtful responses. It's one of the attractions of traveling to Kerala, which you won't get elsewhere in India. So, thank you so much. I'm just going to, I think there are very important points, and as I said, there's something which I'm thinking through, and I'll have to work through that. And it's easiest, the last one I can finish off first, because as I said, it was very tentative. I thought a lot about whether I should mention Gandhi in this book, and I said I would, because also to, say it without having thought through the full thing. I mean, I'm aware of the other questions about Gandhi's own ambiguous moral stature and so on. I was not talking about Gandhi as a person in terms of his practice, but I'm talking about a possibility of making a virtue of being different. So I was looking at Gandhi as an example. It's a performance of being different. Gandhi is a great example of a performance, of a confident performance of being different. Now, of course, what are the conditions for Gandhi to do it, whether all of us will have the conditions to do it, is another issue. But as an example of, not in terms of, we all, I'm sure we now agree, the critique of his position on caste, etc., well acknowledged. But I'm talking about the particular role in which he does, in able to not only be different, take on a very powerful governmentality which is operating on him when he takes on the British, for example. What is he doing? What is the way he presents himself as a moral figure? Whether he is really that or not is not important. Suppose I come out tomorrow and say I am doing fasting, I want to be in superior moral position vis-a-vis corruption in the country. The question is whether I am really that, what kind of a person I am is one kind of an analysis. But the point is, if I am successful, what does it tell us about social performances of this kind? Claiming to say I am taking on a moral position. So I was just trying to extend that to the minority question, but it's still obviously in a very confused state of mind. Okay, let me phrase the answers which I'm giving in terms of what I began trying to do. I'm trying to understand what is the formation of the social. How does this collective happen? Also in response to the question, how does the social happen? That's the point from which I begin. How does a particular social happen called majority? How does a particular social happen called minority? And I was critiquing this point that since most of the debate on this, in the world academic and the world, the UN debate, the EU debate, all of them is still talking about minority in terms of numbers. So I begin by saying this is what they are doing and I want to find a critique of it. How do I criticize that? On what grounds do I find fault with it? Right? So I, hopefully what was clear is I did not subscribe to the number account at all. And that's why I was connecting it to the larger project of sociology and the role in which statistics is played in sociology and the problems with it. So that's still something which I'm trying to work with. And I first began, before I decided to do this thing, I began what closer to what Spoke was saying, on the notion of experience. It's one, because it is an extension of our work in Cracked Mirror, and also because we've been rethinking about it so much. The question about what constitutes an experience of being a minority and how does it give us a ground to actually articulate what is it to be a minority. I didn't go there for various reasons, because I found this conceptualization far more important to me right now. But I think that's always part of my larger project. How do we make sense of this? The point about Spoken, the only point I want to add to what you said, which I agree with you, is that the majority is also constructed by the minority. And when I mentioned the case of the critique of Appadar and others on construction of Hinduism itself, I'm often reminded of the fact when I study Hindu cultures, for example, within various, let's say, Brahminical cultures, the big fight between the Vaishnavites and the Shaivites. In fact, the biggest opponents to the Vaishnavite movement has been the Shaivites, both of whom are unified as a majority for, let us say, other religious communities. But within their own practices, because with Vaishnavism, there are two things which happen in the south. One, an attack by the Shaivites who drive them out of their places, their temples and so on. And also one, like it happens in various places, not a Mughal, but an Islamic conflict which also happened, a religious conflict, Hindu or Vaishnavite Islam conflict. But if you still talk to the discourses today of the Vaishnavites, to them the Shaivites are still a bigger problem than the Muslims. But when you construct these as Hindus as a category, as if their larger conflict is with Muslims rather than between Vaishnavas and Shaivites, it misses the point that the idea of majority is also being created in the context of minorities. But so there are 2 points which I was trying to make, that the very notion of the social formation, how some of us become the majority and how some of us become minority, that process of social binding or glue has very different characteristics, and I was trying to exemplify those characteristics, and hopefully it will now tie in. There's a latter part to expand on this, is to tie in with the notions of experience. And how does this actually work out in the context of being a minority, and what does it even mean to say that? I'll just, on this point, I'll stop here by pointing out one interesting paradox of being or experiencing under problem of minority. You see, one can, a critique of it which someone might give to us, which is, one can say that one can experience something, a particular kind of a situation, but whether one can experience being a minority is a slightly different question. That is, I can experience being, let us say, a religious follower, particular kinds of religious experiences, but can I experience being a minority? In other words, the domain of minority experience, can it be located within the individual who experiences it? I think that's a valid critique, and we'll have to explore parts of it, but I want to put that as part of the larger question. So it's also to Professor Madhu, I think the point about counting, which was very important, and part of my own interest in this question of the social has been about what is the relationship between aggregate, the social, the numbering, the counting, etc. What is it that differentiates them and so on. In the case of caste, I've been looking at questions of what is it that does, what is the sociality of caste which is different from just a collection of people together who might belong to some group, etc. And I think that is a much more larger. So much of what you said, I totally agree with. Dilip's point about the public is actually very important. Yes, and I did, when I invoked the public, that too in the end as a way